Solar PV Cast by Shift, a podcast exploring solar energy and the role it plays in improving our lives and our planet. Here's your host, Chris Palliser.
Thanks for tuning into yet another episode of the Solar PV Cast. Yes, I am Chris, and the PV Cast is brought to you by Shift. For all your energy storage and solar needs, visit shift.ca. Now, just imagine the size of the array that could produce 300 megawatt hours each year, which offsets 190 tons of carbon dioxide emissions, the equivalent of pulling 41 cars off the road. That's a huge array, or maybe multiple arrays. Imagine, that could power a whole village, honestly. And that's exactly what we're talking about in the episode today. We are talking to a village that is 100% renewable energy, net zero. And joining me from the Village of Stirling in Alberta is Chief Administrative Officer Scott Donselaar. Scott, thanks for joining the podcast.
Thanks, Chris. It's a pleasure to be here.
So, Village of Stirling, first tell us exactly where this is, a little bit about it, maybe population, things like that.
Yeah, so we're a community of about 1,300 people. We're in southern Alberta. We're about 20 minutes south-ish of Lethbridge. Kind of our running joke is that we're 20 minutes to Costco. So it's kind of a nice, quiet little community in southern Alberta. And we are actually one of two National Historic Sites in Canada. So the village has that designation, and the second one is in the province of Quebec.
Oh, incredible. Well, I need to go there because I'm the guy that pulls over on the side of highways to read, historic site signs. So,
we have plenty of that here. In fact, when I took over as Chief Administrative Officer, I learned a great deal about the history of the South, as well as how the irrigation canal systems were built, because a lot of the residents from Stirling have family ties back to when that actually happened in the 1800s.
Oh, wow. So there's some serious history there. That's cool.
Yeah, quite significant.
Where'd you move to? How did you get to Stirling then yourself?
I came in as the Chief Administrative Officer. I moved to southern Alberta in 2012 and took this position in 2020.
Okay. Oh, very cool. Well, the whole reason we're talking about this amazing Village of Stirling and the history and all of that is because you continue to make history by being Canada's only net zero village and one of the few net zero communities across this country. So tell us how that came about.
That actually came about by the foresight of our previous council. So some of those members are still sitting on council, but they saw that the energy market in not just Alberta, but in the country would be changing, and that the opportunity for getting 6 cents per kilowatt hour electricity was gonna be far gone. So they looked at a way that they could manage to offset the municipal operation. So the whole village isn't net zero, but the entire municipal operation is, right down to our street lighting. So we have full carbon neutrality on all municipal functions within the village. So they saw the opportunity to utilize solar and hopefully be able to leverage what they're paying in lease concept for NMAX to offset our power bill and our lease payments enough to be able to reduce those costs overall for the village. Now, we're southern Alberta and we're a very small community, we have to exercise a measure of fiscal prudence when we're investing in what at the time was about $500,000 capital improvement to the community. So when we did that being very mindful that every dollar we spent had to demonstrate that there would be a return in the future, which we've been able to do over the course of its inception. And in particular, in the last couple of years, we've seen such an offset that it's paid for the lease payment and demonstrably lowered our overall power bills.
Wow, that's incredible. Is it mostly solar, or is there wind? Or what was the renewable energy you utilized?
It's all solar.
All solar.
There is a wind project. It's a larger wind farm that's slightly northwest of the municipality, but that's all privately held and within Lethbridge County and the County of Warner. So we have 4 buildings with roof mount solar, and then we have a ground mount array system that we have aggregated into our lift station. And that provides the remainder of the offset for our pool, our administration building, and our street lighting components.
How does it feel, when you get to have this conversation with people? Is there an element of pride?
Actually, it's kind of exciting. many municipal governments, doesn't matter where you are in Canada, our only mechanism for leverage is property taxes and fees. So when I came in here, it was nice to see that we had a council that was creative in their mindset. And I mean, of course, there's climate change spin-offs that, I mean, that may not have been the precipitating factor, but we are energy net zero. So I mean, we are contributing to the overall climate change conversation by doing such. And when I talk with my municipal counterparts, I'm able to explain to them that there's a definitive financial benefit for doing this as well. It isn't just a capital improvement that is going to cost you money in one hand and not have the economic spin-off on the other. So being able to come into a community that had that foresight and was the first village in Canada to become net zero for their entire municipal operation, it's a significant bit of pride. And I mean, we've entertained about a half dozen communities from Alberta that have come and we provided tours for, opened our books to, and shown that here this actually works. So it is something that is viable.
Well, and what's amazing about this is you did this, I believe I was reading, in 2018 for the roof mounts, and the ground mount was finished in 2019. So,
Yep.
a lot of people are catching on now, but the Village of Stirling, again, you say foresight a few times, they're 5, 6 years ahead of everyone else.
Well, and it isn't even just on the solar side of things. I mean, our community has we have full fiber optic internet. So I mean, we're one of the very few villages where if you're a remote worker, I mean, a lot of our community, we have a lot of professionals that live within the community. When COVID hit, they were able to adequately work at home, and even our mayor jokes because he works in Lethbridge that the fiber optic internet in Stirling is better than what he's provided for in the city of Lethbridge. So our council's been really deliberate in the initiatives that they've undertaken to make sure that it's improving the overall experience for residents who want to join our community.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And that's where we are in solar in this country. We're at this amazing place where for so long it was, hey, fight climate change, go solar. But now all of a sudden the economics and the ROI and everything because of the cost of materials has come way down. It's like, no, 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 no. And unfortunately, or fortunately, however you want to look at it, society runs on investments. How am I going to get my money back? And what are the economics of this? And so all of a sudden this is viable. And I feel like people aren't aware yet that it is viable.
Well, we saw the benefit to the municipality, and our mayor himself, he's got solar on his home, and he speaks to people about the advantages because when he's building up his credits, he basically doesn't pay a power bill for the year, and everyone looks at their distribution costs and transmission costs on the electrical side of things always climbing. Well, solar is one way where you can build up those credits throughout the course of the peak time, especially in southern Alberta, where through July and August, we have so much more sun than we do cloud cover or downtime that you can build up those credits and likely not have a power bill going in through the wintertime. So even on the economic side of things, when people are looking at financing or funding a system, it's one of those benefits where, yeah, you're making one payment, but you're eliminating that whole power bill side of things potentially. So, I mean, the municipality's taken to the point where we've even got a clean energy improvement program, which is administered through Alberta municipalities, where people can take almost out like a local improvement tax, so to speak, against the property. So the loan isn't actually in their name, it's assigned to the property, but it allows them to amortize the payment structure over the whole duration of the improvement. So for solar, you can amortize it over 25 years as opposed to your standard 10.
Yeah, 100%. Now, what about energy storage? Now, because you are feeding the grid, correct? Is
Yes.
any energy storage involved for you guys?
We haven't gotten into energy storage as yet. The real fundamental challenge is the battery technology. Just it's mostly in its infancy in the development stage. So we have been talking with Fortis because they have technology they're experimenting with about being a community that could be a beta tester for them on that side of things. So we do have those conversations with providers, but right now with how it's in its infancy and it's sort of in that preliminary development and trial and error stage, we haven't made any capital investment in it. Again, council's very strategic. Once it's there and the technology is proven, well, they'll probably take the initiative to move into it. So,
Yeah.
I mean, the uptick in solar and municipal government came once the proving ground was done. So when the technology was proven to be a benefit and they were seeing it in the commercial application, municipal governments jumped all over it because they wanted to be in the same space where we can save money and have that positive spin for the environment but also for our ratepayers, where we're not having to play with that economic lever every time costs go up and increase.
Yeah, and energy storage costs a lot. It costs a lot
It
of
does.
money, and because it costs so much right now, it does play into the economics of it all. Now, being Alberta, when you produce excess, can you sell that back to the utility?
It does, yes. So right now, because we're free, we're kind of unique. We're one of the provinces that has an open market. So every kilowatt hour that we're generating, we're selling back into the system compared to our consumption. So our when they do our system builds, they're usually taking a look at what our sun exposure is on general for the year. And then of course, we're generating far less in the wintertime, but then we're generating far more in the summertime. And something that's relatively unique to Alberta is some of our energy providers, much like the company we deal with, they offer what's called a solar club rate, where you can flex a high rate when you're producing at an excessive volume and flex it back down to a low rate when you're underproducing. So it allows people with solar, particularly in Alberta, to build up relatively substantial credits fairly quickly, which then offsets the rest of their power bill throughout the course of the wintertime when they're underperforming in their system.
Yeah, that's great. And when they're selling it back to, my experience mostly is in BC, where they do buy your excess energy back, but they buy it at market price. Now, because Alberta, again, and being an open market, they're paying you like a producer, correct?
They are. They're paying us like a producer. So, like with our system right now, we'll if we generate on our high rate, we're generating at 30 cents per kilowatt hour. So we're selling it back to them at 30 cents per kilowatt hour, but we're also paying on the consumption at 30 cents per kilowatt hour. So I moved to that rate in end of April, early May, when we start to see the change in time for the measure of sun exposure on our arrays, and we begin to build credits all the way through until October. Then we go down to a lower rate, which is in the 8 cent per kilowatt hour range. And we just burn up those credits throughout the course of the calendar year. And then on our larger ground mount system, it builds us enough credit that we're able to offset our street lights and a significant number of costs after we've paid our solar lease. So
Yeah.
we've offset our power bills, we've offset our solar lease, and then we're paying into our regular municipal operation side of things, which is the financial win for us.
Yeah, that's amazing. How is not to weigh into politics too much, but of course, the moratorium that Alberta put on solar kind of affected a lot of the big projects. Now, not you guys, your installs had already happened.
Yeah.
But do you have any thoughts on that? And there seems to be this kind of idea that let's pause. I don't want my fields to be taken over by abandoned solar farms and things like that, which I can see, coming out of the abandoned oil derricks and
Absolutely.
things like that. I have appreciation for that. But has anyone asked you for your thoughts on this? And hey, it seems to be working for you guys. Well, give us some thoughts.
So I know where the government moratorium kind of came out of. I've been to a couple of meetings where a lot of the RMs and counties, they had the larger concern with it because of the abandoned well sites. So where the counties run into problems is the reclamation component of things. So if I've got agricultural land and I install, say, a 1,000 megawatt ground mount system in there, and then once those panels and everything reach end of life, I don't do the reclamation, and now I abandon it to property taxes. So where the counties and the ARM and the municipal districts were concerned was in the orphan well sites, the providers just stopped paying. The farmer didn't pay the taxes, and the only mechanism is for the municipality then to take ownership. So now they have a brownfield site they can literally do nothing with, and the cost of reclamation far exceeds what they would ever recover in the property taxes. So I think that's a lot of where the moratorium came out of. And then part of what's come out of it that was recently released was areas where they don't want to see it. So protected areas, parks, land where they don't want to see development being built to preserve the agricultural nature. So a lot of our provincial park spaces, areas
Mhm.
adjacent to them. Um, so do I think it definitely had an impact, but I can understand why the government pumped the brakes a little bit, because they rolled out the regulation, but then when the concerns started coming forward, they recognized that there wasn't the mechanisms in place to really sort of address the requirements. So part of what came out of those conversations in the meetings that I attended was that the counties wanted to see regulations in place that required a reclamation of some sort. So if the company's been there making the money off of it the entire time, paying the lease to the landowner, there should be some requirement for reclamation in the future so that the municipality isn't stuck with that. Because ultimately, then those costs end up going on the tax base because you've got this unusable large tract of land that's no longer able to be dealt with. And then in many cases, even in the orphan wall situations, it's the municipality then paying the school tax portion because the people are deficient on the taxes, which then gets put forward to the general rate payer.
Right.
So I think in our rush to roll it out, because renewables are going to be here and they've been proven to be effective in their time frames. So in the peak production time, there's great use of renewables. I think they really needed to balance at that point in time the desire to move forward with projects, moving the grid in a more net zero way, but also to address the concerns where in 20 to 25 years, we're not going to see a whole another orphan well system, but this time it being on the solar and wind farm component of it. So,
And I totally understand that. I guess in my mind, like, it's a ground mount system. So you just go, the company, if it's generating electricity, I just go and put newer panels on in 25 years.
I actually asked that question and I was quite surprised to find out it isn't the panels that are necessarily the problem. It's the concrete in the ground because the concrete has a deterioration rate to it. So the engineers won't certify the reattachment of new systems to it. So that's where the reclamation comes in. And that's the challenge with the wind farms, was my understanding, is that once the wind farm reaches end of life, they technically can't put another tower on that same bit of concrete. So that's where the county's got into the reclamation, because on the wind towers, there's something like 360 tons of concrete holding the windmills in place.
Never even thought of that, honestly.
Yeah. So, I mean, it was for someone like myself, it was quite an education sitting in the sessions to understand the different sides of the argument. So I think as long as we've got astute business partners who are willing to put the time and dollars aside to be able to reclamate those sites, I can't see there ever being a future issue with the implementation of renewables.
Totally.
So,
yeah.
And I believe
making sense beforehand,
is over now, but realistically moving forward in a prudent way that protects everybody, so it protects the company, but also protects the municipality and the landowner, it's probably the most responsible way to move forward with it.
Yeah.
Particularly given the experience they had with just the oil system in the province.
Of course, yeah. Everyone's going to be, a little, I don't know if triggered is the right word, but aware of what happened with that. You know what I mean? I get it.
When we go ahead without proper regulation.
Yeah, totally. What about, with that in mind, is there a plan for the Village of Stirling in 25 years when they need to, redo the ground mount or? Yeah.
Actually, there's technologies out there that we're looking at. They've got post technologies now that don't utilize concrete. So we could reclamate the site and then put in their post panel system. So the panels go in and they collect on both sides, and they're biphasic panels. So you actually collect more solar radiation in the wintertime when it reflects off the snow and comes back into the panel. And some of the substrata that you can put under there, normally you use vegetation, but if you put a mineral base down that has a slightly reflective component to it, certain types of rock bases and things, you can actually garner higher production during the summertime as well.
Incredible.
Which then also shrinks the size of the solar field you need to make that same level of production. So we have all of this stuff in mind for future planning down the line. But realistically, in 25 years, our panels efficiencies will still be at 80%. So our challenge will be building out the system or looking in ways that we can remain carbon neutral and maintain that status as our infrastructure continues to further grow and expand.
Yeah, you should be in these conversations with the government and the landowners. You got right there, right? You said it yourself. It's like, all right, guys, well, heads up. There's some new tech that we can implement here. And the Village of Stirling is, like you said, you guys are on it.
Yeah, we're quite proud with where we've positioned ourselves. Economics has played a role. There's going to be great environmental spin-off. And like I said, we built our programs out to try and share with our ratepayers the same benefits that we're realizing. So if people don't want to try and subsidize the system through traditional means or do improvements to their home to create energy efficiency through traditional means, we've given them another mechanism, another tool in the toolbox, so to speak, so that they can do those sort of things, which we think just kind of plays into that overall financial benefit for people in the long run too.
It's great. What about the residents of the Village of Stirling? Are they aware of how solar plays a role in their community?
I think they have been. I know when it first rolled out, people were questioning the capital spend because, again, $5 million or $500,000, sorry, in capital spend for the village is a significant amount of money, particularly with what we had for funding back in 2018 and 2019. But when they realized the general economics of it, the majority were in support. I mean, you always have your naysayers, and it doesn't matter what you do, but the majority were in support. And as a result of the things that we've done, we've seen a number of solar applications. We usually get 2 to 3 a year for people doing their own personal solar on their homes.
That was my next
So
question. Yeah, you're starting to
they've
see it pop up on houses.
absolutely, which was the incentive for us to roll out the Clean Energy Improvement Program, because then it allows us to look at solar, but full building envelopes, furnace improvements, window and door improvements, and it gives people an ability to leverage something for the lifespan of the asset, which you'll never get through traditional financing models.
100%. And I think you touched on it earlier too. It's about locking in your costs, because if there's one guarantee in this world, it's energy prices are going up with the electrification of the grid and so forth. So
Absolutely. There's no way to get a carbon neutral grid and not see that the energy price is going to spike. And the distribution costs will continue to climb with our conversations with Fortis as they have to make those improvements and adjustments. I mean, as we add more renewables, they also have to build out the system to support the renewables. So all of those costs kind of go hand in hand.
Mhm.
So when we see it happening, it's probably best, even on a personal level, for people to take whatever measure they can to be able to ensure that they can support themselves and minimize their overall cost of their household income. Because nobody wants to decide whether they pay their power bill or put food on their plate, really.
Yeah. Oh, totally. And again, kudos to the village and the council for making this decision, because you're right. Probably initially, when 5, 6 years ago in Alberta, when they brought this to the table and they said, hey, we're going to spend this much money on solar, trust us. There was probably a lot of people that were like, no, not a chance. But it's really cool to see that 5, 6 years later, you can be like, see.
Well, and when you really think about that, your comment's very true. And when you think about it and you look at the solar projects in Alberta, a lot of the net zero communities came out of southern Alberta. So there were other communities besides us that were having these conversations with their communities because they saw the same thing we did. The writing was on the wall. We just happened to pull the trigger faster than the others.
Yeah. And so great now that 5, 6 years, you guys have been paying the same costs for energy.
Yeah, and you know what? And that's really the key winner there is our municipal budget hasn't been nearly as impacted as those who don't
Yeah.
have the renewables and aren't leveraging them in to the best of their ability.
Yeah. And again, yeah, I just even think of budgets, right? All of a sudden, everywhere else as well, we've got to up budgets due to inflation and energy costs. We've got to up things this year. Sorry. Whereas at least on that side of things, you guys say, we paid for this up front. We're good on this end.
Well, I pulled up our financials. I kind of figured that would come up. So in last year, with all of our energy for all of our facilities are tied directly to solar, not including the administration, building, pool, or street lighting, and all of our lease payments, we walked away with a $12,775 credit, which then offset all of our other municipal operating costs that we had. Now, did we pay some for power? Sure, but not nearly what we would have had we not had solar in place.
Oh, and find me another community that has financials like that.
Yeah, it's hard to find because
Yeah.
the challenge is again the buy-in. People just don't believe it, whether it's a council, an administrator, or the community at large. If the resistance is too great, they don't look at it. I think those walls are being broke down because we have had other municipalities come, and there are other municipalities building out solar projects over the course of the next 3 years, based solely around seeing what we're doing. Because we're very open with our municipal partners to say, hey, we did it. There's no reason you can't.
Yeah. Wow, that's great. I mean, thanks for joining the podcast today to have this brief conversation about the Village of Stirling. If just to confirm, if you're listening or watching on YouTube, Village of Stirling, added to your things to do this summer. One of 2 national historic sites in Canada in terms of villages, and being run totally on solar power.
And as a shameless plug, it's our 125th anniversary this year. So if you happen to be down between July 18th and 20th, we are having a major community party, and we'll be hosting a free Trevor Panzak concert for anyone who wants to attend on the Saturday.
There it is. All right. So July 18th to 20th, you said.
Absolutely.
The place to be, the Village of Stirling. Thank you so much, Scott, for joining the conversation today.
Hey, Chris, thanks for the invite. I appreciate it.
The Solar PV Cast by Shift with Chris Palliser. To begin your solar journey, visit shift.ca.